Welcome to the 2019 Great Capstone Case Competition at UCF. We got 3 teams presenting in the finals today. They've each got about 13 minutes, I believe, to do their presentation, and basically an unlimited amount of time in front of our panel of judges to assess the quality of that. So good luck, guys. If you see me waving around the big microphone over here, that's to remind you to make sure that you're handing off the mic so that the folks who are watching in can hear what we're saying. All right? Good luck.
Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you for being here this afternoon. We are Team Can You Hear Me Now? My name is Brett. With me today are Jared, Charlie, and Andres, and this is our strategic analysis for Verizon. So the challenge that we were presented with was to develop a product that could be utilized on the Verizon 5G network. We were given a budget of $10 million with which to do that. The product itself had to provide a positive net present value as well as a minimum internal rate of return of 12%. So obviously we know that time is important during a medical episode. The average time in Orlando that it takes for an ambulance to transport a patient to a hospital is about 20 to 30 minutes for a non-emergency and 7 to 9 minutes for an emergency with lights and sirens. During that time, paramedics are providing life-saving care, administering medication, and then once you get to the hospital, it takes even more time to complete any necessary testing and imaging, such as MRIs, CAT scans, X-rays. And what we want to do is reallocate some of that time, save it from the hospital having to do it, and provide a better and faster patient care experience. And we're going to do that with our product, the Articulated Imaging Relay, or AIR, made possible with Verizon 5G. So basically, the form of AIR is similar to the overhead lamp at a dentist office. It'll be an adjustable arm that's affixed within the back of an ambulance that the paramedics can maneuver around a patient while they're still in transport. During that time, they'll collect those images, the X-rays, CT scans, and those images will then be sent to the hospital over that Verizon 5G network. The doctors will then get more detailed information of the incoming injury or illness via augmented reality. And I'll send it over to, I'm sorry, and now we also did a SWOT analysis of Verizon when we began. So the strengths that we noted were that Verizon obviously has a very strong brand recognition, and they are also a leader in the current 4G LTE technology. One weakness that we identified was a lack of diversity in the products that are offered, which leads us into our opportunities. Having that capability or the opportunity to get into that new medical market, as well as the potential to be the first with that 5G network. And then obviously we recognize that there are threats that Verizon is currently facing, such as that race to 5G and the competition that they have both domestically and internationally with their other competing companies. And now I will send it to Jared Andres, to speak about how the AIR product actually works and go into more detail.
Thank you very much, Brett. So I'll be taking us into what makes up AIR, and in addition to our strategic proposal identification. First, I want to share with you guys a philosophy within the emergency medical services community. There's the Anglo-American perspective, where they want that patient to get to the hospital as soon as possible, as opposed to the Franco-Germanic perspective, where they are actually bringing the hospital to the patient by enabling their paramedics to do more to save the patient before they arrive at the hospital. And that's exactly what our AIR does. It learns from the Franco-Germanic perspective. Imagine there's a heart attack patient on a street. That person, once they have a heart attack, the clock is ticking for them. Time is very valuable. The ambulance is called. Once they're laid into the ambulance, that is the moment when our articulated arm scans over their body, and that immediately goes over a live scan of their body, visualizing their bone structure, their organs, their bodily fluids, where it will be by Verizon's 5G technology data transfer to the hospitals, where there will be an emergency surgeon there equipped with the software integrated with HoloLens, like mixed reality lenses, that will allow for that surgeon to be analyzing the body and also visualizing and zooming in on what is wrong with that patient, in this case, a heart attack. and they'll be able to prepare their team for for that patient to come in and immediately execute on their attack. So what makes up air? Within the ambulance, what makes up air? So there's two folds to the product. There is one part within the ambulance, and that is the articulated arm, where it will be a scanner that will be a compact version of X-ray, CT scan, and MRI. In addition to within the hospital, there will be software integrated with the HoloLens technology there for the emergency surgeon. And now I'm going to pass it on to Jared to take us into the financials.
So we broke our initial outlay up into 10 different phases. We ended up using $9.5 million out of our $10 million budget, and we bolded what we felt were the three most important phases because they make up 74% of our total initial outlay. Phase 2, which deals with going into non-functional designs, creating the code, and as well as creating the database that drives our hologram. Phase 6 is purchasing the medical equipment. We took the price of the current market price of medical equipment today and applied that. And then phase 7 is putting together a marketing team, which involves the salary of that marketing team, the cost to advertise, the cost to create more marketing videos, as well as the cost to reach out to hospitals to explain to them what our product is. So using that $9.5 million initial outlay, we plan on selling 1 unit per year at a selling price of $5.5 million. We felt that's a reasonable selling price because, like I said, we used the current market price of the medical equipment, as well as we implemented the 5G technology, giving it a little bit more value than the current price of the medical equipment. We had an inflow of surcharge of the 10% of the revenue, which is we got from the billing of the patients, as well as a training revenue of $100,000, which we brought in from the hospital by teaching EMTs and doctors how to use our product. And then our cash outflows are the worker's salary, the depreciation, which we use a straight line, and the cost to produce 1 unit. We had a positive MPV of $814,283 with an IRR of 15.7. Next slide. And we believe our mission statement, we believe our product fits well with Verizon's mission statement because our product allows for a more direct form of communication in the healthcare industry that hasn't been brought out before. And we also believe it fits well with the vision statement because our product enhances the ability of humans, businesses, and societies to do more good in that healthcare industry. And now I'd like to pass on the implementation process to Charlie.
So we have this incredible product, but how do we get it out to the market? We broke it down into 10 phases that spans over 33 months, ranging from collecting a design team to put together the concept art, all the way to introducing it to the medical community. I'd like to focus on 4 of these that we believe are key milestones. The first is going to be product development and design. This is going to be where all the software is completed and done within the hospital using current gen scanners so that there's no time lag between the future of the scanners that we're expecting to come out. This also allows us to test the scanners' holograms that may be produced from these scanners as well. Next is going to be testing materials. Both the 5G network as well as the scanners like the X-rays, MRIs, and CAT scans utilized within the air arm are highly sensitive and are prone to interference. So we want to make sure that we mitigate these, and since the arm is being transported constantly within an ambulance, we want to make sure that the material is durable. Next is going to be prototyping. This is going to be the first time that both the scanner as well as the arm and the database are used fully together. So the team not only sees how it works and functions within the ambulance, but also how it's transmitted, so that within the ambulance, since you're so constrained in space, is there anything that we overlooked, such as the arm movability or the boxes that are within holding medical material? And then last but not least is going to be demonstrating to local hospitals as well as gathering feedback. And the second part of that is key there, is the gathering feedback. This is the first time that professionals have hands-on with these, such as professional doctors as well as EMTs, that we can gain valuable feedback, such as hologram accuracy, hologram clarity, as well as what future software and hardware updates can come for future versions of AIR. So today we talked to you about what our product is and how Verizon can utilize it, as well as the medical community, how we plan to introduce it to the community, and the financials that surround it. Thank you everyone for your time, and we'd love to take your questions.
Bob?
So judges, you'll all be hot mics. You guys remember to hand back and forth before when answering the question.
That's it, yeah. Just one time, it'll take us a second.
Well, I
guess I can't be a judge because I can't.
Here, we can pass
There we
it
go.
up.
Okay, I got it. Thank you. And thanks for offering the help.
Yeah, of course.
I'm going to ask about just a couple of things, okay? If I caught it quickly, you didn't leave the slide up very long, but if I caught it quickly on the timeline, you're saying that it's going to be about 6 months for design development of this product. Did I get that right?
I'm just going to go back to it really quick. So you're looking for the product development and design?
Yeah.
This one here? Yes. So we are expecting about 6 months just because it can be used with current gen technology. We based this off of video game design for the software development for...
Isn't there a huge difference in the environment where this is going to be used?
Yes, but we believe the technology surrounding it can be easily twisted into that of like the video game industry.
Did you talk to anyone in the medical equipment industry about design development to come up with that timeline?
No, I did not. My brother's a paramedic and EMT, so I based it off of the EMT side of things.
Okay, understood. I'm going to tell you that I have a really big question about your timeline.
Okay.
And it starts there. What are Verizon's annual revenues total?
I believe it is...
Look this way, I'll help you.
31.30.
31.
130 billion.
With a B, yes.
Yes, absolutely, yes. Trivia question, we got it.
You're asking 130 billion a year with a B revenue company to invest 5 years of testing and design, and that over that 5-year period of time, if I did my math right, is going to produce 27.5 million over 5 years in revenue, 1 unit a year, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, okay. So the way I'll pose the question is this. If this were a $100 company, $130 company, and you were presenting an idea that would give 2.75 cents over 5 years, would you expect to get anybody's attention?
So I would say from that perspective, we were constrained with our initial outlay of $10 million. And from that perspective as well, we can't come up with outrageous MPVs as well. So with...
You picked the 5-year horizon.
we came up with that assumption. That is correct.
So something else that we looked at, not just going on to the 5-year plan, I'm going to go to a separate slide that I have really quick. So looking at just solely Orange County, there are 8 hospitals and 80 to 90 ambulances. So the hospitals are only going to be the main price point where the database has to be introduced, and then the 80 to 90 are going to take the ARM portion of it. So we're able to lower the prices as soon as we introduce it to each of the 8 hospitals, and then the ARMs are the only portion that are going into it. The way that we also broke up the financials in our thought price is that the hospitals would be purchasing the database center that goes in the hospital, and then within the ARM would be the Orange County government or the government surrounding that local area to pay for the ARMs that go into the hospitals.
Okay. If you believe in this the way I think you do, I'm going to tell you I'm surprised. I understand the constraint on the initial investment, but nobody told you at what point that initial investment would start to stand up on its own, pay the 10 back, and start being highly profitable. So it would have been possible for a 5-year to forecast that you didn't need that money. That was the launcher, right?
Yes.
That got you started. So just if you're committed to this, that's a pretty anemic revenue stream.
Okay.
Okay. The last thing, and I just didn't understand this. Explain to me about the patient picking up the.
Are you asking about the surcharge revenue?
Yeah, the surcharge. I'm sorry, I lost the word for a minute.
Yeah, no, it's okay. So we got that based off of a medical journal, and we took an average, I think the range, because our product is based off of an X-ray, MRI, and CAT scan, and we took the average range of revenue. I think it was like 40, like for example, x-ray was like, the range would be like $45 to like $410 on an average patient. So we took the average of an x-ray, an MRI, and a CAT scan, and we add them up and we average it. And I think there's 10 patients you see per day, times it by obviously a year, and we ended up getting 2.6 million. And we took a conservative approach, so we used 2.5, and then that's how we got the 10% of that.
I get how you got the numbers. Really, where I was interested in is how you fit this into, let's assume for a moment that our system of providing medical services across the country doesn't change. So we've got large insurance companies who are defining what they consider to be usual and normal costs for procedures. And then the difference between that and what the doctor provides or the hospital provides first is kicked back to the provider, and then maybe then, depending upon the arrangement with the insurance company, assessed to the patient. So I'm interested in knowing how you go about fitting that into the current model. It's not going to be just as easy, do you think, as saying, well, now there's going to be a surcharge for these services.
We assume that 10% would be billed to the hospital, and the hospital would adjust their billing based off of that.
But before the hospital can adjust their billing, they've got to go through negotiations with whatever insurance company's networks they're in. I mean, you do understand that,
Yep.
that hospitals today are not literally free to go to what the market will bear in an open sense of that. They're constrained by insurance companies, and keep in mind, one of the largest of which is the federal government through Social Security. So how do you, that's a big deal. So what thought did you give to how you go about making that happen?
We, like I said, we're looking at the hospital to not only do that and work with them, but we also believe that the pricing doesn't have to be necessarily adjusted. That would just be pulled from the bill that they're billing, such as like an ambulance trip. We're expecting, I believe it's $1,500 for an ambulance trip is the average cost, and we're expecting the 10% off of that, and that the value added with the air integrated within the ambulance would balance that off.
So that you understand, I'm not disputing the value of this to the patient. I'm saying that and I'm not even disputing the surcharge necessarily. I'm saying that to assume that that's a laydown is a huge assumption, and the problem could be that ends up as a resistance point for hospitals in embracing this technology. Okay? Somebody's going to pay that, right? And I'm pretty darn sure that the insurance companies aren't going to eat it. I just have this feeling. I haven't called anybody in the insurance industry about it, but I sort of have this feeling that that's not going to happen. And I have a concern that hospitals are going to be reluctant to pass it to the patient. That's their two sources of revenue, okay? Because the patient is not going to be prepared to pay it, and the hospital's going to have a write-off. And they work real hard not to do that.
So I would say it's fair to state that you're essentially saying that this product is really a premium to the current set of services right now. It does save their life in a quicker amount of time. It does allow for doctors to be more prepared in a quicker manner. But I would say with that kind of thought process, this is only a single product and only one product per year kind of item. And it's only being equipped one per ambulance. So it's really kind of like a test run in that sense. It's not being laid out across the whole nation. Once you see the results from it, I would definitely say that from there, people would have better recommendations on whether or not that's something that...
I'll just close this down, if you don't mind, this way. I respect what you just said. I'm going to tell you how I heard it.
Yes, sir.
Okay? We really didn't actually have a plan for how we were going to get this surcharge paid. So we came to the boardroom without that. And over time, the product will prove itself to be worth that surcharge, but that's not how you presented this, okay? So I appreciate the afterthought. It was a good recovery, but I'm suggesting to you that if you're going to throw revenue numbers on the board, you better know how they're going to actually materialize.
Of course. Thank you.
I mean, I had a similar question, but a little bit more step back. Did you do any research to see what percent of folks that are transported in an ambulance to a hospital ultimately get some sort of imaging? Because then if they were going to get it anyway, then that, insurance company discussion is a little different. I'm just curious if you did that analysis.
So we did that analysis based off of, since the ambulance is always in transport, even if the scanner is not in use, that since it's in transport, that 10% would cover any malfunctions that may have occurred, which during the gathering information and testing the materials, it's also looking at the gyroscopes and the shock absorption to mitigate that and make sure that doesn't happen. But stuff always happens. It's going to happen no matter how many precautions that you put up. So we believe that 10% would help cover that almost as an insurance cost in a sense.
Yeah, I may not have stated my question. I was just, in order to determine how well this will be received by insurance and folks, do you know how many people that ultimately are transported get imaged once they get to the hospital? Because those would be the people that you would say, okay, if that's 20%, then you take that, and then, okay, does it make sense or not?
I believe was that in the article of the University of Florida?
Yeah, it might have been one of the sources that we used, but I'm not exactly sure on the exact number.
But if you allow us time, we'll definitely come back and answer that question with you.
Okay, I've got a lot of questions.
Okay, excellent.
All right, so you should thank your teammate here. He pinned me down. I've got on the lapel. He pinned me down pretty well in the Q&A session and grilled me on this one. So, which is good. Good for you. You owe him a beer or something. A lot of things. I know we didn't give you much money to work with. I think what would have made better sense as a business case is to talk about, this is the money we'll use to create our prototype, get the kinks out, make it work. But, then we sell hundreds of these things, one per year. Come on. I mean, I would have left right then. That's so small for even a $130 million company. That's not enough. So you might want to present about, how many ambulances are there in the United States and how many hospital systems. You start getting me excited with some big numbers, and if you sold these things there, now we're talking. So that was probably a flaw in the case, is the $10 million, maybe if you had just thought of that as your development cost to create that one prototype and make this thing work and show the value in it. And then here's the scale. Here's how this thing scales. I would also wonder, these things are going to be expensive. Can rural hospitals and rural medical communities afford this kind of thing, or is it only going to be for the rich in the big city? That would be a question I would have. But the main thing I want to talk about is talk a little more about how it needs 5G. Can it work under today's wireless telecommunication standards?
So I'm going to look at it based off of 4G LTE.
Yep.
So even now, it's almost congested to a sense that there's so much data being sent back and forth. So many people are downloading Netflix videos and streaming videos and such that it's congested in a sense. And that's where the word throttling comes into play, that it's not the best word to use because it's not the proper word to use. And 5G looks to be an exponential number of how much data can be transferred. And because of this, we're not limiting ourselves to how much data we can send. And the big data point is the live video feed of the 3D holographic render of essentially a heart, if it's a heart attack victim.
That makes sense. It would be good to actually show some research, like what is the throughput needed for that kind of connection, where it must be clear, it must be fast, it can't break up, and how that compares to, it's pretty easy to find out what kind of speeds and latency you can get in today's world. So I would need to be convinced, if I was going to invest in this to create a market to demand 5G signal, I would want to know, can somebody do this like on a crappy T-Mobile network, or does it really need a Verizon 5G signal? Was R&D in there somewhere? I think on one of those timelines, because this would take a lot of R&D. I know it's like a video game, but not really. With it's the human body and health, so the R&D and testing would be a little bit higher than for a video game.
And we based the R&D based off of using current gen scanners so that could be used today rather than looking at future gen. And also we are basing our assumption off of that the scanners we are going to purchase, not develop ourselves.
Okay. Okay, and then there's FDA
Yes.
stuff in there. Was that, I couldn't remember if that was in there.
Since we were basing it off of the scanners that are currently implemented, we assumed that those were already in place there.
That was a bad assumption, yeah. The transmitting of that medical data, for one thing, you've got HIPAA laws to think about, like this is someone's heartbeat being transferred, that's sensitive personal information that somebody could intercept. And who knows what they'd do with it, but somebody would probably like to have it. And then on the revenue model, I echo the comments about the surcharge. I didn't understand that. If that ends up in the patient's, well, the patient, if they're having an emergency, doesn't get to choose what kind of ambulance they're getting put in. So I'm not sure that part of the revenue model really works. It seems like this is something the hospital would have to pay for in full. Now, if they wanted to try to do some kind of, could negotiate with an insurance company to get, but that's a snake pit too. Talk about a tough business, medical insurance. And the last thing I wanted to ask, so the arm scans the body, seemed very futuristic and cool. I like it. And then it sends like a holograph of your internal organs or something. What was the?
So after the scan, it's constant as it's going along. So if it's a heart attack patient, we would place the scanner over the heart area, and it would develop a 3D render of the patient's heart, and it would be transmitted to the doctors in the hospital, where they would use augmented reality glasses to see both the internals and the full heart as itself as well.
Okay. Cool concept. It is a cool concept. The last thing I'd say is it has the maybe one of the differences between the, what was it, Franco-Germanic
Yes, sir.
process is the litigious nature of the United States. So I would somehow end up getting sued for this because the scan would get jumbled and we would end up taking off the right leg instead of the left or something like that. That's a cost for both the manufacturer and us. You'd have to factor in as you need some umbrella coverage. So that would be a pretty significant cost. But all in all, it's a really creative idea and interesting. Yeah.
Before you continue forward with that, I wanted to take it back to you talking about the large numbers, the really big numbers.
Yeah.
Trying to do some mental calculations. Really, I recall coming across articles stating that there's roughly 50,000 ambulances across the whole nation. And our product selling price roughly around $5 million. That's upwards over $250 trillion really there if we were to implement that in all of the ambulances. Obviously that wouldn't happen.
Right.
But those are the kinds of numbers that would come around with such an expensive product, and because we were restricted with the 10 million, only coming up with one. But in the long run, that would be kind of the payoff of innovation from the 5G technology in addition to such an advanced technology.
Yeah, I'd like to see that business case where you just have some kind of, no, well, I'm not for the trillions, but you have some penetration rate of how many ambulances you could get this thing into, how many you could create a year. But then that gets into a whole nother level, but that's a more interesting business case. Any other?
Thank you.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you. Good. Good job. Good job. Well done.
Nice job.
Well done. Thank you. Good job. Good. Just glad I got to see you again. Good job. Congratulations.